Cheers.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us here this afternoon. Technology, you've got to love it. Sometimes it's a bit frustrating, and we're just about to have one of those moments. We did actually have a sizzle reel to show you, so you could actually see what Airspeeder looked like live. But instead of that, we're going to have to go probably beyond analog. Stephen, can you start by just giving our audience a sense of what Airspeeder actually is, what it looks like? How can they expect to spectate it when it goes live?
Sure. I am the sizzle, unfortunately. So hi, I'm Stephen Sidlow. I'm Global Media Marketing Director at Airspeeder. Airspeeder is the world's first flying car racing series and the only racing series for flying cars in the world. That's the marketing trope over with. We are a eVTOL company at the end of the day. So we are an electric vertical takeoff and landing company. We build these out in Australia and we race them. It's all in order of building a new mobility revolution. As we know from the blueprint of the past, everything starts with motorsport, or everything starts with competition, I should say. So we're at that next level where we are creating a new sport that enables all of us to have a new sense of mobility.
Yeah, and it bears saying that it's not a drone.
It does. So our vehicles are 4.1 meter length. They are human controlled, and they're also remotely operated. They have, same characteristics really as a Formula One car. So 200 to 300 kph. We're going to move to a system in the future where there will be hydrogen and electric powered. But yeah, our whole remit is, it's not drone racing, it's a new type of motorsport for the world.
And that's the thing, is that when we talk about Airspeeder and you hear it discussed, it's often in the same breath as Formula One. And this does feel kind of like the early days of F1. And John, you've got extensive experience in that field. What can we draw upon with Airspeeder from the early days of F1? What makes this moment fundamentally different?
Well, I think Formula One has evolved over many years, many decades, and subtle differences from season to season, lessons learned and such like. We're at a position with this sport where we're actually inventing the whole sport in one go, and the actual perception of that sport, the way the drivers connect with each other, and the competition itself has to be reconfigured and rethought through. Now, while that evolution has been clear, and there are lessons to be learnt from Formula One in terms of, creating equitable racing and such like, I think there is this opportunity to push the boundaries a little bit more and actually learn as we go along.
And do you get a bit frustrated when people say, "Oh, it's like Formula One," or it's like, "No, it's bigger, it's better, it's different," or it's like, "Yeah, that's a fair comparison."
Not frustrated. It's quite a nice feeling to be kind of compared, or at least in the same league as Formula One. It's lovely. But we do like to feel that we can stand on our own 2 feet. We want to stand on our own 2 feet. We are a new type of motorsport. We are going to be different. We want to be different in a sense. We don't have a legacy. So if you look back at the early years of Formula One, and even before that, so pre-motorsport, the very first racing car drivers was, Charles Renault, and and they were there to kind of bring forward a new type of, a new culture into the world through motorsport. So they were the ones that were, they were part of the RAC club at the early days. So it was more of an ingrained culture of we want to be pioneers in this new type of mobility. And before that, it was just horse and cart. So we kind of see ourselves at this same position where before us, we could say that there's Formula One before us, but actually before us, it's just four-wheeled vehicles on the ground, and we don't have that legacy. So we're in this really interesting position where we don't have a legacy, but we're associated with Formula One, but we don't want to we don't want to hold on to that too much. We want to do our own thing.
Yeah, and I mean, John, you might want to explain just why this was so up your street, because I mean, your Formula One credentials are hot damn impressive.
Well, I think, the opportunity to be part of that next generation of racing series, and actually the opportunity to be part of the team designing a new sport, is tremendously exciting. I think the way that these cars, historical racing forms have always been driven by gravity, for example, or by the topography that they race on. We can take that away with these vehicles and actually create racetracks in the sky. And I think the combination of that with technology, where more recently sport has been determined by the actual digital nature of digital aspect is been driving sport is changed during the lockdown. So where previously digital was coming into a physical environment, we're actually starting with a digital environment going into a physical space. And I think that's what's really interesting as well, because it is changing that paradigm between the two.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you're obviously not limited by grandstands or circuits or anything like that. So how do you reimagine this experience whereby you've got, obviously, as I say, you've got roots actually, with what you've designed in F1, and Airspeeder has gifted you an almost limitless space to inhabit. Is it a question of where do you stop, not where do you start?
Well, I think that's true. I think, essentially, for me, it needs to be, this racing, this competition is about, technology, but it also needs to be about human endeavour. For it to be relevant and for it to be interesting, for it to attract people to the sport, I think that there really is that human aspect to it. And I think part of the challenge is actually where there is such a dominant and reliance on technology is how do you make it equitable within that space, and how do you make people certain that there is that equitability, where there is, the fact that there is meritocracy in terms of the racing, and it's not just tweaking the computers or the AI to make yourselves go faster. So I think that's a very interesting thing. So when we started looking at the pit buildings, we're still at this stage, the limitations in terms of battery life with the electrics and such like. You have to change the batteries and the likes. So how do you actually create the pit experience associated with that? Now for me, that's also part of that human experience, creating an authentic pit lane experience where there is equitability in terms of dwell time within that space. But at the same time, the team are part of that racing endeavour is key.
Because how many pit stops are there actually going to be per race, or how does it actually look, in terms of 15 minutes circuit?
Great question.
Yeah.
So for us as a new sport, we're looking at teams coming into the sport that have that historic, but also that technical value to coming into the sport. So let me give you an example. We're looking at 3 Formula One teams coming into the sport. We're looking at Air Forces coming in as teams in the sport. It's not like energy drinks. They're looking that these are companies which are have advanced engineering departments that can do a lot within
the military
aerospace.
Versus McLaren.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think each team will have their own race strategy.
Yeah.
As for flight time, we all know there is an issue with flight time with eVTOLs and how longevity and how far they can travel before they have to charge, and et cetera, especially when they've got a payload. So each team will have their own race strategy on that. At the moment, we've done 300 test flights to date and 3 races behind closed doors, and it's around 12 minutes of flight time.
Yeah.
But the speed at which the innovation is happening and the teams that will come into the sport will absolutely speed that whole process up. We don't have all the answers because we want teams to answer it for us. That's how we feel innovation is going to happen. So we give them a platform, which is the Lauda aeronautic platform, the speeder itself, and teams will then develop it to win a race, or dictate whether they do 1 pit stop or 2 pit stops per race, or whatever it might be. So we give them a platform to be able to innovate.
And what about in-air collisions? Presumably that is frowned upon.
It's a question I get asked all the time. How safe is this?
Yeah.
But
there's nobody up there, so can these vehicles have at it?
Yes, we want them to.
Yeah.
Motorsport is dangerous. I think that's what makes what we're doing cool, as opposed to air taxis, which is a mobility revolution never started with taxis. It started in motorsport. That's how we all have rear vision mirrors, disc brakes, seat belts. Everything has come from motorsport. So we want it to be completely dangerous.
Yeah.
So collision avoidance networks between these vehicles are going to be very important. And we want 10 vehicles at once, racing in close proximity to each other at those speeds. They will have carbon fiber monocoques, they'll have halos around them, they will ballistic parachutes, etc., etc. So there's many lines of redundancy to keep the pilot safe, but we want it to be a dangerous, jeopardy-filled sport. I think that's the only way we'll kind of push forward with innovation.
Yeah.
And keep the fans interested. We want it to be exciting, and I think we can do that. There's always going to be a crash. You're not going to get anywhere if we don't crash. We want to crash all the time. I think that the difference between what we do and, say, a Red Bull Air Race or an air taxi or a new eVTOL air taxi is that our vehicles are designed to crash and race. A plane is designed to fly. A race car is designed...
very much not crash.
Yes, and not crash. Yeah. And a race car is designed to crash and go fast. We're trying to create both, where we fly very fast and we're designed to crash on impact.
And then just one last question on the technicals of it, if you will. For F1 drivers, they must get so sick of hearing it doesn't matter who you put in the car, the car almost, which is a bit unfair. That's presumably not going to be the case with Airspeeder. It's very much the skill of the pilot rather than the quality of the vehicle.
Yes. So our first pilot that we signed up was Bruno Senna. So Senna, Ayrton Senna's nephew, immediately said this is part of, he wants to be part of this. It's part of their family heritage to be going fast and winning. But other pilots that we've spoken to are experimental class pilots that are ex-Top Gun program, and they've got really high life insurance. And they want to win as well. So, it will come down to a little bit like horse racing. So, yes, it's good to be small and lightweight, but you still need skill. There's a difference between, Frankie Dettori and others. So there will be a lot of skill involved with being on board.
And John, I know that one of the conversations we've had is, as you said, for the heroic element of this and the human element of it. Would you like to speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I think, fundamentally, something which is so determined by the advancement of technology that there needs to be that human endeavour to attract people to that sport. So how do we create that? How do we create environments where, you've got the ability to create heroes over time? You've got a whole new generation of heroes coming into that space. And I think what's really fascinating is where, a lot of the people gaming online and such like, a lot of the skills are actually transferable from that gaming environment into this physical environment. So the opportunity for anyone sat in their, starting off in their bedroom to become one of these heroes is a tremendously compelling endeavour and opportunity.
And it's very easy to do. So you can sign up on our website to be a pilot. Airspeeder.com. But the opportunity for young people to get involved in this is really exciting. So we know that there was a study done that by 2030 we will need 250,000 pilots globally across the whole spectrum to keep everything in the air. So that's everything from every plane that you can imagine. But then you've also got on top of that cargo and drone delivery and Airspeeder and everything else. So we're gonna need a lot. And the route to get into this industry is quite tough. So 60 hours of becoming a pilot, and then it's £60,000 to get your wings and so forth. It's quite a hard entry. For us, it's all about democratizing this process. So what we've done is we've created a simulated environment where you can start flying these speeders tomorrow and testing yourself and getting a lot of hours within the simulator that then is transferable in our sport. And so it's almost like karting was the precursor to going into, say, motorsport and Formula One. We're creating that, and we had 20,000 sign-ups of kids within the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Who downloaded the game, tested it, playing it, and the cream rises to the top, and we can then push them through into our academy. So we're finding pilots where the aviation industry couldn't get anybody to come in. So yeah.
Female and male, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
We're just democratizing the whole process.
Well, as I say, it's fascinating from the point of view of the competitors. John, I guess you've got a duty of care as well to the fans. What's being a fan going to look like and feel like at an airspeeder event?
Well, I think, the nature of the event makes it, in some terms quite difficult to spectate, because these are smaller objects moving very fast in the sky. So perception of depth and such, like understanding the stresses the vehicle are going through, is a difficult thing to articulate with that spectacle. I think the great thing is the ability that where we have these races is really flexible. So actually finding the right location for the races to happen, and races with verticality, with a vertical backdrop, I think is a wonderful opportunity. So, through rivers, through cities and such like, would give you that amazing perception of depth and an understanding of what these cars are doing in that space. Or great scenery such as the Grand Canyon or that kind of environment. So how do you then take that and then bring that to the actual consumer, to the spectator? And clearly technology has a lot to play in that. The circuits themselves is a combination of augmented reality and physical physical stops within there. And actually, the ability for the spectator to engage in an augmented sense, I think that technology is coming to meet us on that journey. So really, there's going to be a huge amount of data. And, with these, with Formula One, there's, thousands of measurements in real time. It's going to be the same, if more so, with airspeeder. And really, so how do you actually make sense of all that data and focus in what's important in terms of the race? Time will tell. But I think, I want to go back to the pilots. I want to go back to the people who are experiencing this racing and ensure that we have, we can understand what they're going through in terms of haptics, understand the stresses that they're undertaking, and really, be with them in the cockpit as they race around these augmented circuits.
Absolutely, and obviously you've designed some of the most iconic sports venues in the world. Was that history something that equipped you well for this, or was it almost right? We have to rip up the rule book and start again.
Well, I think it's always interesting with whatever sport you look at. I think it's always great to sort of challenge yourself and say, what makes this sport special? And, how can we articulate the experience of that sport in the best possible way? How do we create innovation around that spectating experience? And I think certain lessons we've learned from that. I think, for me, it needs to be quite an open sport because of that technology, it's quite easy to think that the race is rigged, So, the ability to see into the race control environment, see that it is fair, understand what is going on in a very complex environment, I think is fundamentally important. And we have learned that from sports where if there's too much going on behind the scenes, I mean, everyone's got an opinion about VAR.
Yeah.
If you've got the same thing and everything's related to digital, how do you actually make it meaningful and make it that people want to actually participate and watch it?
Completely. And obviously sports, many things, but one thing it is not is uncrowded. There are an awful lot of sports out there. There are new, fresh, different sports coming through all the time. How are you going to stand out and compete for the sponsorship buck and the broadcast buck and all those types of things in modern sport, in this landscape that we've got today that is crowded?
Great question. If you know the answer, let me know.
Available for a consult.
It's huge. It's a big answer, that one. So it's multi-layered, I should say. So for us, we're not just a sport. So if you take away the sport for a second, we are the microcosm of a new city, a new type of mobility and transportation, or a new type of airport. So if you take away the sport, we are 10 human-powered vehicles in the sky with 20 filming drones in close proximity. That's an airport. So all of that has to be hyper-connected. All that has to be safe and secure. So when we're talking about partnerships, we're not really talking about sponsorships. We're talking about those who want to do work in big data, in security, of talking about defense. We're talking about companies who want to innovate outside of their own sport. So we kind of are almost a sandbox environment for a new type of mobility industry. Cities are looking at us on how we're going to enable fans or people to be in that environment or in that 2-kilometer radius while there's all of this show above their heads. So on a purely technical perspective, we are we're in a good space there. Yeah. As for kind of building a new sport, we are in a crowded market. There's new sports every 12 hours, it feels like at the moment. And I have to think, how are people going to react, or how are people going to engage with the sport in 5 to 10 years' time when this comes to a real fruition? And so I have to do a lot of mental gymnastics and do a lot of research on how we're going to engage and immerse ourselves in this new sport. Now, you could go down a road of metaverse and think that way, or you could go down a road of just motorsport, sort of a Formula E kind of direction. I think hyper-personalization is going to be a huge part. AI is proving that hyper-personalization is going to be the leading winner of a lot of these discussions. It's not necessarily the AI, it's the fact that everybody can have their own personal experience with it. Yeah. So how do we build a sport that enables someone like my dad, who hates on-screen graphics at motorsport, get rid of it, I just want to watch the race, to say my nephew, who just wants all of the information for everything and lots of onboard switching and everything else. So giving them hyper-personalization is going to be a big part. And I think that's the direction we need to go. I think if we pigeonhole ourselves with saying, well, our legacy is Tron and Blade Runner and so forth, and Back to the Future 2, and make it really futuristic, I think we'll alienate ourselves very quickly. I think we have to take what works in sports, what works in competition, and bring that to life and test it and learn from it. No new sport that's come to market has got off the blocks really well straight away. I think we need to test and learn and move forward.
But with one eye on the future, obviously, with what's going on with LA 2028 and their recent announcement that they'll be using eVTOL integration. Well, they're testing it with a view of using it in the Olympics when it's there. What were your reactions? I mean, you've had a hand in Olympics before.
Well, it does seem a natural progression. 2028 is clearly not that far away, and we're seeing a lot of our sort of bigger projects at the moment. We're being asked to integrate or actually plan in where you can put vertiports, and clearly, where would they go within a transport interchange program is kind of key. And then you combine that with some of the challenges of delivering Olympic. One of the biggest challenges of an Olympic Games is the mobility. How do you get people there? How do you get people away? So the idea that we've actually got an alternative to create diversity around that mobility is really exciting. And clearly day one the numbers are not going to be massive, but it could be a long-term strategy of allowing to make these games fundamentally more sustainable, hopefully, where people are using the sort of more group and public transport to get to these events. So the fact that it is the Olympics, the fact that it is the greatest show on earth, and what a great opportunity to showcase that new means of mobility and that diversity of opportunity that it brings.
Yeah, and presumably from your point of view, you must have thought, yes, it's getting into the public zeitgeist.
Yeah, it is, and I think it should happen a lot more. I think, what is it? It's been like 5 or 6 years between sort of 90% of the market was horse and cart to 90% of the market was automobiles on the street. It was quite a huge leap in such a short space of time, and I think we're kind of seeing the beginnings of that now. So there's more drones in the air than ever before. There's cargo is going to be the next big wave. Then there's going to be a kind of push towards air taxis when there's more. I would say a welcoming for regulation and so forth and testing, etc. So I think it's on its way. I think motorsport and what we're doing is going to be another part of that. We're going to help push that forward, because it's going to come into the public consciousness a lot more when there's a sport behind it and there's a winner and there's a loser. There's technology that's being developed in front of you. I think it will start to come into the, like I say, the or the international conscience a lot more. Being at LA is going to be a great thing, because it enables people to choose to travel in this way, and it will be hopefully at a better price point, I would say, than getting a helicopter or a plane. So yeah, it's fantastic news.
And John, just to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier about the haptic aspect of this, whether it's as part of the race or just the general embracing of what role is that going to play?
Well, I think the way we understand, obviously, with technology, understanding how athletes perform generally, I think is becoming more acceptable, and more people want to have more data about their favourite, player, or that kind of thing. So how do we actually bring that into the sport from day one? I think is a really interesting aspect. The amount of stress, the amount of G your body's facing in these environments is, we're at the boundary of human endeavour. That is what we're trying to create. So understanding what that boundary is, I think, is almost at the essence of what this sport could be. To really understand how those, the drivers, the athletes perform in those very stressful environments, and then work with their machine to win, I think is really the crux of that competition.
Now, this is obviously going to be an area that's quite jargon heavy, I suspect. And I think for people to go away and just have some tangible takeout, what would you say are the key pieces of jargon or tech speak around this, or points to remember that you'd share with the audience and say, look, if you hear somebody talking about this is what they mean, this is real, this is trying it on for size?
Oh, I don't know. I think eVTOL is probably the easiest one. So electric vertical takeoff and landing craft. So it's multi-directional, it's hoverability, it's just, like, helicopters are very expensive. They are prone to a lot of safety problems, as well as they're prone to a lot of maintenance. So these are lightweight, they can be electric, hydrogen. So it's a new type of craft. It's not a plane. It's not a helicopter. It's a whole new type of craft, and it's a cheaper price point. So if you're traveling in an air taxi, hopefully it's going to be a cheaper price point than traveling on a helicopter or a plane, like I mentioned. As a single-seater, so in our industry, we're trying to use motorsport as a way to enable single-seater eVTOL craft. And that is, I wouldn't say it's jargon, but you're kind of moving towards the flying car aspect to it. It's your own personal eVTOL craft. And for us, we're on the sports side, but there are other companies doing single-seaters out there, but ours is on the high-performance sports side. So yeah, not necessarily hard jargon heavy. I don't think we need to be. I don't think we need to be too much, but eVTOL is probably the one that you will start to hear a little bit more about.
I think the sport will evolve its own bubble hats over time.
Yeah.
But I think you started with, the key is that it's not a drone. It's something different to a drone, and I think that's where it's really exciting, because it is the combination of human endeavour and machine together, rather than just AI and computers actually driving it.
Man meets flying machine. Well, I think that's probably the perfect note on which to end it. Gentlemen, John, Stephen, thank you so much for your time, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.